The wind cut like a dull blade across the Helena freight yard. 20 below, maybe worse. Sarah May Hollister crouched behind the locked warehouse with her brother and sister, dividing 3 frozen half potatoes between them. The scraps came from the hog feed barrel, vegetable ends crusted with ice, smelling of coal smoke and rot. Tommy pushed his portion toward Lily. You take it. You're smaller. Lily pushed it back. Mama said boys need more. Neither one ate, their breath clouded white in the dark. The depot office door swung open. Vernon Hollister stepped out, face hard in the lamplight. Sarah's uncle, their legal guardian. He saw them and locked the warehouse tighter. Ungrateful orphans, he said. Your father was a thief. You'll learn your place. A man stood by a freight wagon. Loading stopped mid-reach, tall, weathered, 50, maybe older. His eyes fixed on the children, then on Vernon. Sarah's hand went to the object in her coat pocket, her father's compass, frozen solid, blood still visible on the brass rim. The stranger's voice carried across the yard. Get your things. You're coming with me. Vernon's hand jerked to his left vest pocket. His fingers pressed there just for a second. The wagon ride north lasted 3 hours. Sarah held her siblings close under rough wool blankets that smelled of horse and leather. The stranger, he'd said his name was Cordell McKenzie, drove without speaking. Snow fell steady, muffling everything except the creak of wagon wheels and the horse's breathing. Tommy whispered against Sarah's shoulder. Is he taking us to the orphan train? I don't know, Sarah said. Hush now. But Lily was already asleep, small body limp with exhaustion. The ranch house appeared through the snow like something from a dream. 2 stories, lamplight in every window. Outbuildings scattered across white fields. Cattle dark shapes against drifts. Mackenzie lifted the children down. A Chinese woman opened the door before they reached it. Small, maybe 40, wearing a clean apron. Her face showed no surprise. Mei Lin, Mackenzie said. 3 more for supper, and beds. Yes, Mr. Cord. She studied the children. They need baths first. Hot water ready in 10 minutes. Inside, the house breathed warmth, wood smoke and coffee and something baking. Sarah's legs nearly buckled. Beside her, Tommy stared at the dining table, set with actual plates, cloth napkins, a basket of bread already steaming. Malin guided them upstairs. The bathroom had a copper tub, steam rising. Lily cried when the hot water touched her frozen feet. Sarah held her, whispered promises she wasn't sure she could keep. When they came down, clean, dressed in borrowed nightshirts that dragged the floor, Mackenzie sat at the table with a ledger open. He looked up, gestured to the chairs. Sit, eat what you want, leave what you don't. Tommy and Lily stared at the food. Roasted chicken, potatoes with butter, carrots, bread with jam. More food than they'd seen in 6 months combined. Go ahead, Sarah said quietly. Tommy took a biscuit. Bit into it like it might disappear. Lily followed. Both ate slowly, carefully, like hunger had taught them not to trust plenty. Sarah forced herself to take a plate. Her stomach twisted, too long empty to accept food easily. She ate anyway, for her siblings, to show them it was safe. Mackenzie watched without comment. After a while, he pushed the ledger aside. Your father, he said, James Hollister, railroad foreman, died March 14th, 76. That right? Sarah's throat closed. She nodded. He pulled me out of a rail trestle collapse 3 years back, spring of 75. Trestle gave way during construction. I went down with it. Your father climbed into wreckage, still shifting, pulled me clear, crushed both his legs doing it. And Sarah remembered. Her father had limped after that, said it was nothing, kept working. Saved my life, Mackenzie said. Told him I owed him. He said forget it. But a man doesn't forget a thing like that. He looked at Sarah directly. Gray eyes, tired but steady. So that's why you're here. I'm 3 years late paying a debt. We can work, Sarah said. Her voice came rough. I can read and write. Do figures. Tommy can fetch and carry. We're not asking for charity. Didn't say you were. But tonight you eat and sleep. Tomorrow we figure the rest. Malin showed them to beds upstairs, real beds with quilts and pillows. Tommy and Lily fell asleep before Sarah could tuck them in properly. She stood at the window, looking out at snow falling on dark fields. Her hand found the compass in her coat pocket. She'd refused to leave it behind. The mechanism felt solid, frozen. Footsteps in the hall. Mackenzie appeared in the doorway. That is compass? He asked, nodding at her hand. Yes, sir. May I? She handed it over. He examined it by lamplight, turning it carefully. His face changed when he saw the dark stain on the brass rim. Blood, he said, not a question. From the accident, they said he fell into the rail yard, hit his head on the tracks. Mackenzie's jaw tightened. He handed the compass back. Your father was a surveyor before he was a foreman. Good one, too. Taught you? Some. Numbers, mostly. How to measure land. Read property lines. That's rare. Most girls, he stopped. Most children don't learn that. Papa said land doesn't lie, said I should know how to read it proper. Mackenzie nodded slowly. Smart man. He paused. Your Uncle Vernon. He's your guardian now? Sarah's hand closed around the compass. Says so. Got papers from the territorial office. You believe those papers are real? I don't know what to believe anymore. Mackenzie moved to the window, looking out at his land. How long before the orphan train? Sarah's chest tightened. 90 days. February 15th. He says it's already arranged. Says Papa signed papers making him guardian before the accident. Says Papa wanted us sent east if anything happened. Your father say that to you? No, sir, never. Mackenzie was quiet for a long moment. Outside, snow fell steady, the sound of wind against glass. Get some sleep, he said finally. Morning comes early on a ranch. We'll talk more then. But he paused at the door. Sarah, that compass, the blood on it. You ever wonder why a surveyor's compass would have blood from a man who fell and hit his head? Surveyors carry those on their belt. Wouldn't be near his head in a fall. Sarah's breath caught. She'd wondered, many times. But asking questions about her father's death had earned her nothing but locked doors and empty stomachs. Mackenzie's voice dropped. 90 days is time enough. Time enough to find out what really happened. If you want to know, and he left her standing there, compass cold in her hand, blood still visible on brass that should have been clean. 2 weeks at the Mackenzie Ranch taught Sarah what normal felt like. Warm beds, 3 meals daily, work that earned respect instead of scraps. Tommy helped with the horses. Lily followed Maylin like a shadow, learning to knead bread. Sarah worked alongside Cord in the ledger room, reconciling cattle accounts, learning the mathematics of empire. But the 90-day clock kept ticking. On the 15th morning, Cord saddled 2 horses. We're riding into Helena. Need to have a conversation with your uncle. Sarah's stomach dropped. He'll say I ran away. He'll call the marshal. Let him try. The freight depot yard smelled of coal smoke and grease. Workers hauled crates from boxcars, chains clanking against wood. Vernon stood near the scales, manifest in hand, directing the unload. He saw them coming and his face went flat. Mackenzie, bringing back stolen property? Cord dismounted slow. These children aren't property, they're family. My family. Legal guardianship, signed and sealed. Vernon pulled a folded document from his coat. Territorial office. Stamped it themselves. Dated March 10th, 76, 4 days before James died. He knew the work was dangerous. Made arrangements. Sarah's hands fisted. Papa never said anything about that. Your father kept things from you, girl. Debts. Poor decisions. He wasn't the man you thought. Cord took the document, read it carefully. The paper looked official enough. Territorial seal at the bottom, Vernon's signature, and another signature, shaky, uncertain, could have been James Hollister's hand. This says your guardian until they're 18, Cord said. Says nothing about orphan trains. Vernon's hand went to his left vest pocket, just briefly, fingers pressed against the fabric. The trains are for their own good. Give them opportunities they won't find here, education, proper homes. They'll thank me when they're grown. Or they'll remember you locked them outside in 20 below weather to eat hog scraps. Vernon's jaw worked. You're interfering in legal matters, Mackenzie. The territorial governor himself approved my appointment. You know Governor Wallace. You know his reach. I know he appoints men who serve his interest. Then, you know, picking fights with his appointees is bad for business. How many cattle contracts you got running through my freight lines? 4, 5? Be a shame if those got delayed or lost entirely. The threat hung between them. Cord handed the document back. You're right about one thing. This is legal business, so we'll handle it legal. He turned to Sarah. Come on. We're going to see a judge. Vernon called after them. Judge won't touch this. Papers are proper. And even if they weren't, who's going to believe a dead man's daughter over a territorial appointee? Judge Emmett Carson kept chambers above the land office. Old man, 60-some, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much and remembered all of it. He looked up when Cord knocked. Mackenzie, thought you'd be up north tending cattle. And got a legal question needs answering. Carson gestured them inside. His office smelled of tobacco and old leather. Law books lined 2 walls. A third held territorial maps, survey lines marked in faded ink. Cord explained briefly. Vernon's guardianship, the 90-day deadline, the orphan train. Carson listened without interrupting. When Cord finished, the judge held out his hand. Let me see the guardianship papers. Sarah handed them over. Her throat felt tight. Carson read slowly. His face changed halfway through. Something shifted behind his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or guilt. James Hollister, he said quietly. I knew that name. Railroad foreman. Came to me in 75, maybe early 76. Said the mine supports were rotten. Said the company knew and wasn't fixing them. Wanted me to order an inspection. He set the papers down. I dismissed him. Told him to take it up with his supervisors. Figured he was just stirring trouble, angling for better pay. Sarah's chest ached. Her father had tried, had gone to the law, and been turned away. Then the collapse happened, Carson continued. 17 men dead, including James Hollister. He looked at Sarah. I'm sorry, child. I should have listened to your father. I didn't. That's on me. Cord leaned forwards. The guardianship papers. Are they legitimate? Carson examined them again. They look proper. Territorial seal, correct forms, signatures, etc. He paused. But something feels wrong. The timing's convenient. 4 days before his death, James suddenly decides to name his brother Guardian, brother he barely spoke to. He crossed to a filing cabinet, pulled out a heavy ledger, land registry records. His finger traced down columns of entries. What are you looking for? Cord asked. Vernon Hollister's been buying land, lots of it. Started right after James died, paid cash. Carson found the entry he wanted. His face went pale. Here, James Hollister's ranch, 2,000 acres east of here. Transferred to Vernon Hollister on... He stopped. On what? Sarah whispered. March 15th, 76. Carson looked up, and his voice had gone hard. The day after your father died. Transfer papers show James's signature, dated and witnessed. On Sarah's head spun. That's impossible. Papa died on the 14th, evening shift. The trestle collapsed at 11 at night. I remember the marshal came to tell us at midnight. Carson's finger tapped the page. This deed says James signed it over on the 15th. At 10 in the morning, 9 hours after he died. The room went silent, except for wind rattling the windows. Cord spoke carefully. That's fraud. That's murder, Carson said. Or proof of it, anyway. He closed the ledger. When he looked up, his face showed something like resignation. But I can't touch this. Vernon's got the governor backing him. Wallace appointed him personally. And the territorial office validated all these documents. If I start questioning them, I'm questioning the governor's integrity. That's how careers end. How judges get replaced. So you'll do nothing? Sarah's voice cracked. I'll do what I can quietly. But officially, my hands are tied. Carson met Cord's eyes. I'm sorry. The law says Vernon Hollister is their legal guardian. The papers are proper, even if they shouldn't be. And the orphan train rolls in 75 days. Outside, snow had started again. Sarah stood on the courthouse steps, compass cold in her pocket. Cord's hand settled on her shoulder. This isn't over. Feels over. Your father's signature on a deed the day after he died? That's not just fraud, Sarah. That's proof someone killed him and forged documents to steal his land. And if they did it to him, they did it to others, Sarah finished. She remembered what Mei Lin had said last week. Chinese railroad workers disappearing. Accidents that didn't make sense. Cord nodded. We've got 75 days to prove it, and I know someone who might help us start looking. The blacksmith shop sat at the edge of Mackenzie land, built from stone and iron that had weathered 40 Montana winters. Smoke rose from the chimney. Inside, the forge glowed red, heat pressing against the cold. Thomas Yates worked the bellows with steady rhythm. They called him Hammer. Had since before the war. Freed slave, master blacksmith, the kind of man who spoke through his hands more than his mouth. He looked up when Cord entered with Sarah. Boss, what brings you? Need something fixed? Cord nodded to Sarah. Show him. Sarah pulled the compass from her pocket. Hammer wiped his hands on his apron, took it carefully, turned it in the firelight. The mechanism didn't move, frozen solid. Your father's? Yes, sir. Hammer's thumb traced the bloodstain. He didn't ask about it, just set the compass on his workbench and pulled out small tools, picks, brushes, oil. Metal remembers, he said, working the compass case open. You heat it, bend it, break it, but the metal remembers what it was, what it's supposed to be. He glanced at Sarah. Truth's like that. You can bury it, freeze it, try to change it, but it remembers itself. Inside the case, ice had locked the needle mechanism. Hammer warmed it slowly over a controlled flame, melting the ice drop by drop. His hands moved with precision that came from decades of practice. Your father brought this in once, Hammer said. Summer of 75, wanted the hinge tightened. We talked while I worked. He told me about survey lines, property corners, how land gets measured proper. Said most fraud happens because people don't check the corners. Don't verify the actual ground against the paper claims. Sarah leaned closer. He never told me that. Maybe he was planning to, maybe he ran out of time. The compass needle came free. Hammer cleaned the mechanism, oiled the pivot points, but when he tested it, the needle swung wild, wouldn't settle. Magnetism's off. Someone dropped this hard, or it took a blow. Hammer met Sarah's eyes. This didn't get damaged in a fall. This got damaged in a fight. Sarah's throat tightened. She'd known, had known since she first saw the blood. But hearing it said aloud made it real. Can you fix it? Cord asked. Need 3 weeks, maybe 4. Have to remagnetize the needle, recalibrate the bearings. But yes, I can make it point true again. Hammer set the compass aside carefully. Girl, you know why your father taught you surveying? He said I should understand land, know how to read it. He taught you because he knew something was wrong, knew someone was stealing land through false surveys and forged deeds, and he knew if something happened to him, you'd be the one who could prove it. He was teaching you to finish what he started. Sarah's hands fisted. I'm 13. What can I do against men like Vernon, against the territorial governor? Same thing metal does. Hammer's voice stayed steady. Remember what's true. Hold your shape. Wait for the right heat to make yourself useful again. That evening, Mei Lin served tea in the ranch house kitchen. Not the usual quick cups before bed. This was ceremonial, small porcelain cups. A pot that smelled of jasmine and smoke. 4 Chinese men sat at the table, all railroad workers Cord had hired for winter repairs. Mei Lin poured in careful silence. Each man received his cup with both hands. They drank together. Then the oldest spoke. Chen Wei, maybe 50, with scars across his knuckles from rail work. Mr. Cord says you ask about accidents, about men who died and lost their land. Sarah nodded. My brother was one. Chen Lu died August 75. They said he fell from a trestle. But Lu never drank, never took risks. He was careful, always careful. He pulled a small notebook from his pocket. Lu had land, 40 acres north of Helena. Bought legal, paid full, had the deed. 2 days after he died, a white man came with papers saying Lu had sold it before the accident, signed with his mark. But Lu could write his name, wouldn't make an X. Vernon Hollister? Cord asked. Him, yes. Another worker leaned forward, younger, maybe 30. My uncle, same story. Died in a rail yard, accident. Had insurance, $2,000. Family got $200. Rest went to pay debts no one could name. Mei Lin spoke quietly. I count 23 men, all railroad workers, all with property or insurance, all dead in accidents between 74 and 76. Sarah's breath caught. 23? All Chinese, all poor white workers, all men no one cared about, men the law doesn't protect. Mei Lin's eyes were hard. We know what happened. We saw Vernon at accident sites, saw him with forged documents, saw him force dying men to make marks on paper. But no American court will let Chinese testify against whites. Our witness means nothing. Chen Wei set down his cup. But we keep records. Names, dates, what we saw. We write everything. Because someday maybe someone will listen. He pushed the notebook across the table to Sarah. Your father was number 18. He tried to stop it. Went to judges, to marshals, to the territorial office. Said these weren't accidents. Said someone was murdering workers for profit. No one believed him. So they killed him too, Sarah whispered. Yes, and took his land, and made his children orphans. Same pattern, always the same. Cord's jaw worked. If we can prove this, if we can show the pattern, show the scale, that's not just fraud, that's mass murder. That reaches higher than Vernon. Someone's protecting him. Someone's profiting. The governor, Mei Lin said simply. Vernon works for Wallace. Always has. Sarah looked at the notebook. 23 names. 23 families destroyed. Her father had tried to stop it alone. Had died trying. But she wasn't alone. She looked up at the faces around the table. Chinese workers who'd lost brothers, uncles, friends. Cord, who owed a debt he wouldn't abandon. Hammer, who understood what truth looked like when everything else was lies. 75 days, she said. We have 75 days before Vernon puts us on that train, before we lose any chance of proving this. Chen Wei nodded slowly. Then we work, all of us, find the proof that breaks this open. Outside, wind rattled the windows, but inside warmth held. And something else. The beginning of an alliance Vernon Hollister hadn't planned for. The territorial investigator arrived on a Thursday morning. March wind still carried winter's bite, but the snow had turned to mud. His name was Porter, thin man in a pressed suit, riding a horse too fine for ranch country. Cord met him at the gate. Sarah watched from the barn where she'd been helping hammer shoe horses. Porter dismounted with distaste, boots sinking into mud. Mr. McKenzie? Territorial office sent me to review certain irregularities. What irregularities? Reports that you're harboring minors without legal authority. The children of James Hollister. Their Uncle Vernon filed a complaint. Says you're interfering with lawful guardianship. Cord's voice stayed level. Those children are guests on my property. I'm not holding them against anyone's will. But you're preventing their legal guardian from exercising his rights. That's custodial interference. The territorial governor takes such matters seriously? Porter pulled out a notebook. You have significant business interests, Mr. McKenzie. Cattle contracts through Hollister Freight, land leases through the Territorial Office, mining investments, all subject to territorial approval and oversight. The threat sat naked between them. You saying my business is at risk because I gave 3 hungry children a meal? I'm saying a man of your stature should understand the importance of respecting legal authority. Vernon Hollister holds proper guardianship papers. The governor personally validated his appointment. Opposing that makes you appear, Porter chose his words carefully, unreliable. A poor partner for territorial interest. Cord's hands fisted. How much is a reliable partnership worth these days? In dollars. Porter's face went cold. I don't appreciate the implication. And I don't appreciate threats dressed as inspections. You tell Governor Wallace that Cordell McKenzie's contracts stand on their own merit, not on whether I bow to fraud. Fraud is a serious accusation, one that requires proof, which you don't have. Porter mounted his horse. The children leave by week's end, or federal marshals will collect them, and your contracts will be under formal review. That's not a threat, Mr. McKenzie. That's territorial law. He rode off, mud spattering behind him. Sarah stepped out of the barn. He can really take your business? Cord stared after the investigator. He can make it harder, delay shipments, hold up permits. Wallace has enough power to strangle a man's livelihood without ever breaking a law. Then maybe, Sarah's voice cracked, maybe we should stop, before you lose everything. We're not stopping, but his jaw was tight. And for the first time since she'd met him, Cord McKenzie looked uncertain. Sunday morning came cold and bright. The church in Helena sat white against blue sky, bells ringing across town. Cord had insisted they attend. Can't let Vernon control where you go, where you're seen. Sarah wore one of Maylin's altered dresses. Tommy and Lily stayed close, scrubbed clean, eyes nervous. Inside, the congregation filled the pews. Ranchers in Sunday suits, merchants' wives in modest finery, the smell of wool and perfume and old hymn books. Conversation stopped when the McKenzie party entered. Vernon sat 3 rows from the front. He turned, saw them, and something like satisfaction crossed his face. The service dragged. Sarah barely heard the sermon. She felt eyes on her back. Judgment, curiosity, fear. These people had known her father, had worked beside him. Now they looked at her like she carried disease. After the final hymn, Vernon stood, raised his hand. Pastor, congregation, I need to address a matter of Christian concern. Pastor Reynolds hesitated, then nodded. Vernon's voice carried, my brother James, God rest him, died 18 months ago. Left debts and 3 children. I've tried to do right by them. Took on guardianship, arranged proper homes for them in the East, paid off what James owed from his insurance policy. $8,000 that should have gone to his children, but went to creditors instead. Murmurs rippled through the congregation. Now Cordell McKenzie has taken them in, refuses to release them to lawful custody, fills their heads with lies about their father's death. About me, about good men doing honest business. Vernon's face showed wounded righteousness. I ask this church, is it Christian to let a wealthy man buy children's loyalty, to turn them against their own blood? Sarah stood before she knew she was moving. That's a lie. Every head turned. My father didn't owe debts, and you didn't use the insurance money to pay creditors. You used it to buy land, his land you transferred to yourself the day after he died, the day after you murdered him. The congregation gasped. Vernon's face went white, then red. This child is disturbed by grief, he said. Doesn't know what she's saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. You forged his signature, stole his property, and when he tried to stop you, you killed him, you and whoever else profits from dead railroad workers. Pastor Reynolds stood. Young lady, that's enough. You're making serious accusations without evidence. Your uncle has legal documents, proper papers. The law supports his claims. The law's wrong. The law is the law, and in God's church, we respect authority. Reynolds looked at Cord. Mr. McKenzie, I respect your generosity, but you're doing these children no favors by encouraging delusions. Their uncle has guardianship. The territorial government validates it. Take these children from your ranch by week's end, or federal marshals will be involved. That's not cruelty. That's order. Around the church, heads nodded. Agreement. Relief that someone had said it clearly. Sarah looked at their faces, these people who'd sung hymns beside her father, who'd eaten at church socials with her mother before she died. Not one of them met her eyes now. Lily started crying. Tommy put his arm around her, jaw set hard. Vernon stood. I'll collect them Friday. Have them ready. Sarah pushed past the pews, out the door, into cold sunlight that felt like mockery. Behind her, the congregation resumed its conversations. Normal Sunday fellowship, as if nothing had happened. Cord found her behind the church, sitting against the white clapboard wall. "I'm done fighting," Sarah said. Her voice came flat, empty. "He wins. The governor wins. We'll go quietly on Friday. Better that than you losing everything." Cord sat beside her, said nothing for a long moment, then, "Your father didn't quit, even when it cost him his life. And look where that got him, dead in a rail yard, his children eating scraps. His children alive, fighting, knowing the truth." Cord's voice roughened. "That's not nothing, Sarah." But Sarah just stared at the mud, watching it dry in the sun, and couldn't find the strength to believe him. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She came downstairs near midnight and found Cord in the ledger room, oil lamp burning, papers spread across his desk. He looked up but didn't send her away. "Can't quiet your mind either?" he asked. She shook her head, stood in the doorway, uncertain. Cord gestured to the chair across from him. "Come here. Let me show you something." The ledgers tracked everything. Cattle births, feed costs, labor wages, freight charges. Numbers arranged in precise columns, each entry accounting for every dollar spent or earned. "Your father taught you figures?" Cord asked. "Some. Enough to help with his survey work." "Show me." Sarah pulled a blank sheet toward her, drew a rectangle. "Say you've got a property, 4 corners. Each corner has a marker stone. Survey says it's 40 acres. But you measure corner to corner, the math doesn't match the claim. Someone's lying, either the surveyor or the deed." And she worked the calculation, showing how acreage could be verified through triangulation. Cord watched, something shifting in his expression. "That's advanced mathematics. Most grown men can't work those formulas." "Papa said land doesn't lie, only the men measuring it." Cord was quiet a moment. Then he pushed his ledger toward her. "Vernon's freight manifests. These are what he bills me for shipping cattle. Look at the weights, the distances. Tell me what you see." Sarah studied the numbers. At first they looked proper. Then she noticed the pattern. Weights rounded up, distances calculated on routes that didn't make sense, charges that didn't match the actual work. "He's overcharging you by maybe 15%. Uses legitimate numbers, but applies them wrong, hoping no one checks the mathematics. I noticed the same thing 2 weeks ago. That's small fraud. Annoying, but manageable." Cord leaned back. "But if he's doing that to me, a man who reads his ledgers, what's he doing to men who can't? What did he do to your father's estate?" The door opened. Mei Lin entered with tea, set cups down without asking. She'd been listening. "The insurance policy," Mei Lin said. $8,000. Vernon says it all went to creditors. But James's ranch was 2,000 acres. Good land. At 76 prices, that's worth what, 20,000 more? Sarah's mind worked the numbers. At least 20, maybe 25 if the water rights were clear. So why would James sell land worth 25,000 to cover debts of 8,000? Mei Lin's voice was soft but sharp. "He wouldn't, unless Vernon's lying about the insurance amount, or the debts, or both." Cord straightened. "We need to see the actual insurance policy, the original, not Vernon's copy." Railroad office keeps records," Sarah said. "Papa told me that once. Every worker's policy filed with the company." "Then that's where we start." Cord made a note. "First light, I'll ride to Helena. Request the files." Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. Not quite hope, but close to it. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Really? It's not just the debt to my father." Cord's face showed its age in the lamplight. "I had a daughter, Rebecca. She died 6 years back, scarlet fever. She was 13, your age." His voice roughened. "I couldn't save her. Watched her fade, and couldn't do a damn thing to stop it. Then you showed up in that freight yard, dividing scraps with your brother and sister. Same age Rebecca was. Same stubborn look she got when she decided something mattered." He met Sarah's eyes. "I'm not doing this just for your father's debt. I'm doing it because I couldn't save my daughter. But maybe I can save you. Maybe that counts for something." 3 weeks since they'd brought the compass to Hammer. Sarah returned to the blacksmith shop on a cold afternoon, rain tapping on the tin roof. Spring trying to break through but not quite managing it yet. Hammer looked up from the anvil. "Good timing. Just finished." The compass sat on his workbench, polished clean. The blood was gone. Hammer had removed it carefully, respectfully. The mechanism moved freely now, needles settling to magnetic north with steady certainty. "Try it," Hammer said. Sarah opened the case. The needle swung, caught, pointed true. She turned in a circle. The needle followed north perfectly. "It remembers," she whispered. "Told you. Metal remembers what it's supposed to be." Hammer wiped his hands. "Now you can use it like your father intended. Find those cornerstones. Prove the land was his." Sarah held the compass, feeling its weight. Then something caught her eye. A loose brick in the shop wall, right behind where Hammer stored his tools. The mortar had cracked. "That brick's been loose a while," she said. Hammer glanced at it. "Since before I bought this shop from the railroad. Keep meaning to fix it, but—" He stopped, looked at Sarah. "Your father worked late here sometimes. Said he liked the quiet, the space to think." Sarah crossed to the wall. Her heart hammered. She pulled at the brick. It came free easily. Behind it, wrapped in oiled cloth, sat a leather notebook and a folded map. Her father's handwriting covered the first page, survey notes and property evidence. "If you're reading this, Sarah, it means I didn't make it. Find the cornerstones, the compass will guide you. Finish what I started." "Papa," Sarah's hands shook. Behind her, Hammer's voice came soft. "He knew he was in danger, knew he might not survive, so he left you the truth." The notebook contained everything: names, dates, accident locations. 23 men, all dead between 1874 and 1876, all with land or insurance. All working for the same railroad company. Vernon's name appeared in the margins. Present at scene, offered assistance, handled paperwork. Sarah spread the map on Hammer's workbench. Her father had marked each victim's property in red ink. The parcels formed a pattern, all adjacent to planned rail expansion routes. Land that would be worth triple once the tracks came through. "He documented the whole operation," Sarah said. "Every victim, every forged transfer." Cord studied the map. "This is evidence, real evidence, but it's not enough. Vernon will say your father was confused, making accusations without proof. There's more." Sarah turned to a diary entry dated March 13th, 1876, the day before her father died. "Vernon knows I know. Confronted him today with the survey discrepancies. He didn't deny it. Said the governor needs the land cleared for rail expansion. Offered me a cut to stay quiet. When I refused, he said accidents happen to stubborn men. Taking this to the territorial marshal tomorrow morning. If something happens to me—" The entry ended there. Hammer's voice came quiet. "He never made it to the marshal. Because Vernon killed him that night." Sarah's hands trembled. "Pushed him off the trestle, made it look like an accident, then forged the deed transfer." Cord took the notebook. "We bring this to Judge Carson tonight." The judge's chambers smelled of tobacco and rain. Carson listened as Cord laid out the evidence. The notebook, the map, the diary entries. His face grew darker with each page. 23 men, Carson said finally. James documented 23 murders. "And Vernon profited from everyone," Cord said. "Land transfers, insurance payouts, freight contracts. He built an empire on dead men's property." Carson pulled out his own files, railroad insurance records he'd quietly requested. His hands shook slightly as he compared them to James's notes. The insurance policies. James wrote $8,000, but look here. He pointed to an official railroad document. James Hollister's actual policy, issued 1875. Death benefit, $80,000. The room went silent except for rain on the window. Sarah's voice came hoarse. 80,000? Railroad companies paid big policies in those years. Dangerous work, high death rates. They insured workers for 10 years' wages. Carson's finger traced down the list. Every victim on James's list had similar policies, 60 to 80,000 each. Vernon claimed 8,000 per man, pocketed the rest. Cord did the mathematics. 23 men, average 70,000 each. That's over $1.5 million. Plus the land, Carson added. Another $500,000, maybe more. Vernon Hollister built a $2 million operation on mass murder. Sarah's legs went weak. Hammer caught her arm, steadied her. Carson closed the files. "This is bigger than Vernon. This is territorial corruption. The governor had to know, had to be involved. You don't steal this much without protection at the highest level." "So what do we do?" Cord asked. "We need Vernon to expose himself, publicly, with witnesses who can't be silenced or bought." Carson leaned back. "The spring cattle auction, 2 weeks from now. 200 ranchers from across Montana territory, buyers, sellers, freight agents, all gathered in one place. If we confront Vernon there, with this evidence, he'll either confess or attack. Either way, he exposes himself in front of men whose businesses depend on trust and honest dealing. He'll bring protection," Cord said. "Hired guns. Then we bring the law. I'll have deputies positioned. And if Vernon's smart, he'll realize he's trapped. Public confession might get him a lighter sentence than hanging." Rain drummed harder against the roof. The smell of wet earth came through the window, spring fighting its way through winter's last grip. Sarah spoke quietly. "What if he runs, takes the money and disappears?" "He won't." Carson's voice carried certainty. "Men like Vernon don't run. They believe their own lies too much. He thinks the governor will protect him. Thinks his connections make him untouchable. He'll show up to that auction because he can't imagine losing." 2 days later, 3 men rode onto Mackenzie land after dark. Hired guns from Helena, sent to deliver a message. They found Cord in the barn, made their threats clear. drop the investigation or the children disappear. Accidents happen to orphans. No one asks questions. They didn't count on 15 ranch hands sleeping in the bunkhouse. Didn't count on Hammer hearing their horses. Didn't count on Cord McKenzie being a man who fought in the war and still remembered how. By the time the marshal arrived, Carson had sent him, anticipating trouble. All three men were tied up in the barn, weapons confiscated, confessing that Vernon Hollister had paid them $50 each for intimidation. Maybe more for violence. If intimidation failed, Carson took their statements, had them locked up in Helena. Then he turned to Cord. Vernon's desperate. That's good for us. Desperate men make mistakes. The auction's in 12 days, Cord said. Then we have 12 days to prepare, to gather every piece of evidence, to make sure when we spring this trap it closes completely. Carson looked at Sarah. Your father started this investigation. You ready to finish it? Sarah touched the compass in her pocket, the needle pointing true. Yes, sir. I'm ready. Late evening. The house settled into quiet. Tommy and Lily asleep upstairs. Maylin in the kitchen, cleaning the last dishes. Sarah sat by the fire, studying her father's survey notes, memorizing the corner coordinates. She heard footsteps above her, Cord moving through the second floor. A door opened, one that stayed closed. Rebecca's room, the daughter who'd died 6 years back. Curiosity pulled Sarah upstairs. She shouldn't intrude, but something in the sound of Cord's footsteps, heavy, hesitant, made her follow. The door stood half open. Inside, lamplight showed a room preserved like a museum. Small bed with a patchwork quilt, books on a shelf, a desk with a girl's drawings pinned to the wall, horses, mountains, wildflowers drawn in careful detail. Cord sat on the bed, holding something small, a carved wooden horse, child-sized, worn smooth from handling. Sarah knocked softly on the doorframe. He looked up. Didn't tell her to leave. Just gestured to the chair by the desk. Made that for her 7th birthday, he said, turning the horse in his hands. She named it Thunder, slept with it every night until... He stopped. Until she got sick, Sarah finished quietly. Scarlet fever came through in the spring of '72, took half the children in the valley. Rebecca fought it for 3 weeks. I sat beside her bed the whole time, prayed, bargained with God, offered everything I had. His voice went rough. Didn't matter. She died anyway, 13 years old. Same age you are now? Sarah looked at the drawings on the wall. The careful detail, the way the horses moved across paper like they were alive. She was talented, Sarah said. She was everything. Cord set the horse down gently. After she died, my wife lasted 6 months, just faded away. Grief took her quieter than the fever took Rebecca, but just as sure. Left me alone, in this house with rooms I couldn't enter and memories I couldn't escape. He stood, moved to the window. Outside, darkness pressed against glass. The smell of rain on new grass drifted through cracks in the frame. When I saw you in that freight yard, Cord continued, dividing scraps between your brother and sister, you looked so much like her. Same age, same stubborn chin, same way of holding yourself, like you could bear any weight if it meant protecting someone else. Is that why you really brought us here? Sarah asked. Because I remind you of her? At first, maybe. Thought I was paying a debt to your father, doing right by his memory. Cord turned from the window. But it's more than that now. You're not Rebecca. You're yourself, fierce and smart and brave in ways she never had to be. But saving you, helping you fight this, it's the only thing that's made me feel like maybe I'm worth something again. Like maybe all this, he gestured at the room, the house, the empire he'd built, means something if I can use it to protect 3 children who have no one else. Sarah's throat tightened. We've cost you contracts, nearly got you killed. Vernon's going to come after you harder after the auction. Let him come. I've got nothing left to lose that matters. Rebecca's gone. My wife's gone. This ranch, these cattle, the money, it's all just weight, just things I accumulated to fill empty space. As his eyes met hers. But you and Tommy and Lily, you're alive, fighting. You deserve a chance to grow up free. That's worth more than any contract Vernon can threaten. Maylin appeared in the doorway. She'd been listening. You're not doing this because of debt, Cord. You're doing this because she's still here. And Rebecca isn't. That's not weakness. That's love remembering itself. Cord's face crumpled for just a moment. Then he straightened, drawing himself together. Then we finish this, he said, whatever it costs. Dawn came cold but clear, April 26th, 2 days before the auction. Sarah led the way, compass in hand, her father's survey notes memorized. Behind her walked Cord, Hammer, Maylin, and Chenway. Judge Carson followed on horseback, leading a territorial surveyor he'd brought from Helena, a man named Morrison, who owed Carson favors and couldn't be bought. The first cornerstone sat 2 miles east of Helena, near a creek that ran high with snowmelt. Sarah used the compass, triangulated from known landmarks her father had marked. The stone lay buried under 18 months of growth and soil. Hammer brought the shovel, dug carefully. Metal rang against stone. The marker came clear, granite, 2 feet tall, her father's chisel signature carved into the base, J.H., 1874. Morrison measured, made notes, took photographs. This matches the survey coordinates exactly. Original property corner, certified legal. They found the second stone an hour later, then the third, each one precisely where James Hollister's notes said it would be, each one proving ownership that Vernon had claimed to transfer legally. The fourth corner sat on a ridge overlooking the valley. Sarah's hands shook as the compass needle settled, pointing to a spot beneath wild rose bushes just beginning to bud. Hammer dug. The stone took longer, buried deeper, settled harder into earth. When it finally came free, something else came with it. A metal box, sealed with wax. Sarah's breath caught. She recognized her father's handwriting on the label. For Sarah May. The truth they tried to bury, inside deed documents. The original transfer papers showing Vernon's forgery, 2 versions, one real, one false. Insurance policy originals showing the true amounts. Letters between Vernon and Governor Wallace discussing the land acquisition program. And profit splits. Everything. Every piece of evidence needed to prove conspiracy, fraud, murder. Carson's face went pale as he read. This doesn't just implicate Vernon. This takes down the governor. Half the territorial office. This is the kind of evidence that destroys administrations. Did Morrison finish his survey? All 4 corners certified. Property ownership verified. James Hollister's ranch, 2,000 acres, never legally transferred. Vernon Hollister's claim is fraudulent. The sun broke through clouds. Warmth touched Sarah's face. Real warmth, spring warmth, for the first time since winter began. The auction's in 2 days, Cord said. We bring all of this. Documents, photographs, surveyor certification, witness testimony. We build a case so strong Vernon can't lie his way out. Sarah held her father's compass. The needle pointed true north, steady, certain. He'll be there, she said. Men like him always show up. They can't imagine losing. The spring cattle auction filled Helena's main square. 200 ranchers, maybe more, crowded between livestock pens and auction platforms. The air smelled of cattle and dust and coffee from vendor stalls. Voices layered over each other, haggling, joking, the auctioneer's rhythmic call punctuating everything. Vernon Hollister stood near the freight office entrance watching his empire at work. Cattle moved through his scales, his manifests, his documentation. Every transaction touched his business somehow. He didn't see the trap closing around him. Cord waited until the midday auction, prime cattle going for top dollar, every significant rancher in attendance. Then he stepped onto the secondary platform, the one used for announcements and disputes. "Gentlemen," he called, his voice cut through the noise. "I need 5 minutes of your time. It concerns fraud, territorial corruption, and murder." The square went quiet, heads turned. The auctioneer's gavel paused, mid-strike. Vernon's face drained white, then red. "Mackenzie, this isn't the place. This is exactly the place. 200 witnesses, men whose businesses depend on honest dealing, men who need to know when the law itself is corrupted." Cord pulled out James Hollister's notebook. James Hollister, railroad foreman, died March 14th, 76. Vernon Hollister claimed guardianship of his children, claimed his land was legally transferred, claimed insurance money went to creditors. He held up the notebook. Every claim was a lie. Vernon pushed through the crowd. "That's slander. I'll have you arrested? By whose authority? The territorial governor who's been splitting profits with you?" Cord's voice stayed level, deadly calm. "Let's talk about those profits. Let's talk about 23 dead men, 23 forged land transfers, 23 insurance policies you embezzled." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ranchers shifted, uncomfortable. This was more than business dispute. This was accusation of murder. Judge Carson stepped onto the platform beside Cord. His presence carried weight, territorial authority, legal power. "I've reviewed the evidence," Carson said, "and I'm prepared to hear testimony, public testimony, on the record with these men as witnesses." Vernon's hand jerked to his left vest pocket. Pressed there, his tell. Sarah watched from the edge of the crowd, Tommy and Lily beside her. Malin and Hammer stood close, protective. Chen Wei and the other Chinese workers waited behind them, witnesses ready to speak. Cord gestured to Sarah. "Come up here, girl. Tell them what you found." Sarah climbed onto the platform, legs shaking. 200 faces stared at her. Men who'd known her father, men who'd turned away when she needed help, men who were about to learn the truth. She held up the compass. "My father's surveyor compass. It had his blood on it when I found it. Not from a fall, from a fight, the night Vernon Hollister murdered him." Vernon's face twisted. "She's a child, grief-mad. You can't—" "I found his survey notes," Sarah continued, voice steadying. "Hidden in the blacksmith shop. 23 victims, all documented, all with land or insurance, all dead in accidents Vernon witnessed, on which she held up the notebook. My father wrote it all down, names, dates, evidence of forgery. She opened to the final entry, read aloud. Vernon knows I know, offered me a cut to stay quiet. When I refused, he said, accidents happen to stubborn men. Taking this to the territorial marshal tomorrow morning. Her voice broke. He never made it to the marshal, because Vernon pushed him off a rail trestle that night, then forged deed documents to steal his land. Lies, Vernon shouted. I have legal documents. Territorial seals. The governor himself? The governor's involved, Carson interrupted. We have letters proving it, profit-sharing agreements, instructions on which workers to target, which properties to acquire. He nodded to Morrison, the surveyor. Show them. Morrison held up photographs. 4 property cornerstones, original markers placed by James Hollister in 1874. All 4 verify his ownership. The deed transfer to Vernon Hollister is dated March 15, 76, the day after James died. The signatures forged. Chen Wei stepped forward, then other Chinese workers. Their presence drew stares. Chinese men didn't speak at white gatherings, but Chen Wei's voice carried clear. My brother, Chen Lu, died August 75. Vernon Hollister forced his hand to make an X on papers while he died. I saw it. We all saw it. He gestured to the other workers. 23 men, all murdered, all robbed. The crowd stirred. Angry murmurs. These were businessmen. They understood fraud. Understood when someone cheated the system they all depended on. Vernon backed up. His hand went to his vest pocket again, clutching something there. This is conspiracy, he said. The Chinese can't testify in American courts. That girl's making up stories. You have no real evidence? Show them what's in your pocket, Carson said quietly. Vernon froze. Your left vest pocket. You keep touching it. Been doing it for months. Every time you lie, show these men what you're hiding. That's private property. You can't... Carson's voice hardened. I'm a territorial judge. I can order a search right here, right now. Or you can show them yourself. The crowd pressed closer. 200 men waiting. Vernon looked around. Saw no escape, no allies, no way out. His hand shook as he reached into his pocket. Pulled out a small metal stamp. Morrison took it, examined it. Territorial seal. Official marker used to validate government documents. He looked at Vernon. This isn't a real seal. It's a forgery. Good enough to fool most people, but the details are wrong. Weights off. This is how you validated fake documents. The crowd erupted. Shouts, accusations, men pushing forward. Vernon's face crumpled. You don't understand. The governor, he forced me. Said the territory needed land cleared for rail expansion. Said it was for progress, for Montana's future. I didn't want to. You took over $1 million, Cord said. 23 men died. Don't tell us you didn't want to. Vernon's legs gave out. He sank to his knees on the platform, and something broke inside him. The lies he'd maintained for 2 years shattered. It started with one accident, he whispered. Chen Lu. Real accident, but when I processed his paperwork, I saw how much the insurance was worth. Saw how easy it would be to skim. Told the governor. He said do it again. Find more men, more land. He took 50%. I had to keep going or he'd expose me. The confession poured out. Names, dates, methods, how he'd identified targets, how he'd staged accidents, how he'd forged James Hollister's signature after pushing him from the trestle. Carson's deputies moved in, shackled Vernon's wrists. Vernon Hollister, Carson said formally, you're under arrest for 23 counts of murder, fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Federal marshals are already en route to arrest Governor Wallace. Your testimony will determine whether you hang or spend life in territorial prison. The crowd roared approval. Justice witnessed. Corruption exposed. Carson turned to Sarah. The land your father owned, 2,000 acres east of Helena, is hereby restored to you as rightful heir. The insurance policy, $80,000 with interest, will be released to your custody. In guardianship, he looked at Cord. Mr. McKenzie, are you willing to serve as legal guardian until Sarah reaches majority? Yes, sir. Yeah, then it's granted. These children stay at McKenzie Ranch under his protection and authority. Sarah's knees went weak. Tommy and Lily rushed onto the platform wrapped around her. The 3 of them held each other while 200 men applauded. Justice served, finally, completely. Cord's hand settled on Sarah's shoulder. Your father would be proud. Sarah looked at the compass in her hand, the needle pointing true, and finally, let herself cry. Not from grief, from relief. From the weight of truth carried for 18 months. Finally shared, finally believed, finally vindicated. The spring sun broke through clouds. Warm and clear, winter was over. 3 weeks after the auction, Sarah stood in the Helena land office. Spring had fully arrived. Meadowlarks singing, grass green, the smell of warm earth through open windows. The territorial clerk laid documents across the desk, official papers, embossed seals, signatures waiting. 2,000 acres, the clerk said. Restored to Sarah May Hollister, daughter of James Hollister, rightful owner. All previous transfers declared void due to fraud. Sarah signed her name. Her hand shook slightly, not from fear but from the weight of it. Her father's legacy, his life's work. Returned, Judge Carson witnessed the signature. Beside him stood Morrison, the surveyor, who'd certified every measurement, and Cord, who'd made this moment possible. There's also the matter of the insurance settlement, Carson said. He slid another document forward. $80,000 plus 18 months interest comes to $93,400. Sarah stared at the number. More money than she'd imagined existing. More than she knew what to do with. The railroad companies also agreed to compensate the other victims' families. Carson continued. Chinwei and the others will receive their brothers' full insurance amounts, plus damages. The territorial government is establishing a fund, $500,000 for reparations. Chinwei stood near the door. When Carson announced the amount, the old man's face crumpled. He'd spent 2 years fighting for recognition that his brother's death mattered. Now the territory itself was admitting wrong. It doesn't bring them back, Chinwei said quietly. But it says their lives meant something. That's worth more than money. The clerk pushed one final paper forward. Partnership agreement. Mackenzie Hollister Ranch. Joint ownership between Cordell Mackenzie and Sarah May Hollister, with Sarah's share held in trust until her 18th birthday. You don't have to do this, Sarah said to Cord. The land's mine now. You could what, run a 2,000-acre ranch at 13? Cord's voice was gentle. Your father wanted you educated, safe, growing up proper. This partnership means you keep your land, learn the business, and have a home until you're ready to stand alone. If you want to stand alone. Or we keep working together. Build something that lasts. Sarah looked at the paper, her father's dream, Cord's protection. A future that wasn't just survival, but purpose. She signed. Vernon Hollister's trial lasted 4 days. The evidence was overwhelming. His own confession, supported by documents, witnesses, surveyor testimony. The jury deliberated 2 hours, guilty on all counts. Judge Carson delivered the sentence in a courtroom packed with spectators. Sarah sat in the front row, Tommy and Lily beside her. She made herself watch, made herself see justice completed. Vernon Hollister, Carson said, you murdered 23 men for profit. You forged documents, corrupted officials, and built an empire on stolen lives. The territory of Montana sentences you to 25 years hard labor at territorial prison. You'll serve every day of it. Vernon didn't look at Sarah as they led him away, couldn't meet her eyes. The man who'd locked her out in the cold, who'd murdered her father, who'd tried to destroy what remained of her family, reduced to a prisoner in chains. Sarah felt no satisfaction, just emptiness where rage had been. The hollow space left when you finally stopped carrying something heavy. Governor Wallace fell harder. Federal marshals arrested him the same day Vernon confessed. The letters Carson found proved conspiracy at the highest level. Wallace was removed from office, tried in federal court, sentenced to 30 years. Half the territorial administration turned over. New appointments, new oversight. The kind of house cleaning that happens when corruption gets exposed in daylight. May brought warmth that felt like promise. The ranch came alive with spring work, calving, branding, fence repair, planting kitchen gardens. Sarah worked alongside the hands, learning cattle management from Hammer, bookkeeping from Cord, cooking from Maylin. Tommy thrived. At 8 years old, he'd found his place with the horses. The animals trusted him. He had a gift for it. Gentle hands, patient voice, instinct for what a horse needed before it knew itself. Lily, 6 years old, followed Maylin everywhere. Learned to bake bread, tend chickens, grow herbs in the garden. Her cough was long gone. Color had returned to her face. She laughed easily now, the sound of it like bells. On a Sunday evening in mid-May, the whole household gathered on the porch. Cord had Hammer build a new sign that week, carved wood, letters burned deep, Mackenzie Hollister Ranch, Est. 1878. They mounted it on the gatepost as the sun set gold across the valley. Partnership official, Hammer said, driving the final nail home. Chinwei and the other Chinese workers had stayed on. Paid fair wages now, given proper housing, treated with dignity the law had denied them before. They'd pooled their reparations, bought 40 acres adjacent to the ranch. We're building homes, starting families, putting down roots. Your father would have wanted this, Maylin said to Sarah. All of us working together, building something honest. Sarah nodded. She'd been thinking about her father a lot lately, trying to remember his voice, his laugh, the way he'd looked at her when she solved a difficult equation. The memories were fading slightly. 18 months was a long time at 13, but the compass helped. She carried it everywhere. The weight of it in her pocket reminded her who she was, where she came from. That evening, after the others went inside, Sarah and Cord sat on the porch steps. Crickets sang in the new grass. Somewhere a meadowlark called, the sound of it pure and clear. "You ever regret it?" Sarah asked. "Everything you risked for us?" Cord was quiet a moment. "I lost some contracts, made some enemies in the territorial government, had to rebuild relationships, prove my reliability again." "That's not an answer." He smiled slightly. "No, I don't regret it. Those contracts weren't worth keeping if they came at the price of looking away from murder. And the enemies I made, they're the kind of men I should be opposed to anyway." He looked out at the land, at the mountains going purple in the dusk. "When Rebecca died, I spent 3 years convincing myself nothing mattered, that caring about anything just meant more pain when you lost it. Built walls, kept everyone at distance. Told myself I was protecting what I had left." He turned to Sarah. "But you can't protect yourself from loss by refusing to love. You just end up with nothing worth protecting." Sarah's throat tightened. "You three, you, Tommy, Lily, you remind me what matters. Family, truth, doing right, even when it costs you. That's worth more than any contract." He paused. "Your father taught me that. Pulled me out of collapsed wreckage when he could have walked away safe. You finished teaching me. Showed me that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost." A comfortable silence settled between them. The kind that only exists between people who fought together, survived together, chosen each other deliberately. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. "We just live?" "We just live. You grow up, learn ranching, maybe go to school someday if you want. Tommy works with horses. Lily grows up safe. We build this ranch into something your father would be proud of." "And you?" Cord smiled, real smile, the kind Sarah rarely saw. "I get to be part of a family again. Get to watch you three grow up. That's enough. More than enough." Later, after everyone slept, Sarah stood at her bedroom window. The compass sat on her desk, polished clean, mechanism working perfectly. Beside it lay her father's notebook, the evidence that had brought justice, that had changed everything. She opened to the last page, her father's final words. "Finish what I started." She had. With help, with allies, with people who'd chosen to stand beside her when standing was dangerous. But she'd done it, proved the truth, reclaimed what was stolen, built something new from broken pieces. Tomorrow she'd ride out with Cord to check the fence lines. Tommy would work with the new colts. Lily would help Maylin plant the vegetable garden. Ordinary work, normal life, the kind of peaceful days her father had wanted for them, the kind of life worth fighting for. Sarah touched the compass one more time. The needle pointed true north. Steady, certain. Like truth itself, you could bury it, freeze it, try to destroy it, but it always remembered what it was, always found its way back. Outside, spring sang its nighttime songs. Inside, family breathed in sleep. And Sarah May Hollister, 13 years old, heir to 2,000 acres and $93,000, finally let herself believe in tomorrow. That compass sits on my desk still. 55 years later, the brass worn smooth from handling, the mechanism precise as the day hammer fixed it. The blood's long gone, but I keep it there to remember. Truth doesn't rust. It just waits for someone brave enough to follow where it points. I'm 68 now. Been running this ranch since I turned 18, 50 years this June. Cord stayed on as partner until he passed in '09. Peaceful, in his sleep, surrounded by family. Tommy took over the horse operation, built it into the finest breeding program in Montana. Lily married a doctor, raised 4 children, all of them knowing their grandfather James's story. Folks ask me sometimes, how did a 13-year-old girl take down a territorial land fraud ring? The answer's simpler than they expect. I didn't. Papa did the hard part, gathering evidence, marking those stones, teaching me the mathematics of truth. Cord did the brave part, risking everything when he didn't have to. Maylin and Hammer and Chenway did the loyal part, standing with us when their own safety was at risk. Judge Carson did the just part, choosing truth over convenience when it cost him friendships. I just did the stubborn part, refused to quit, refused to let Papa's death mean nothing, refused to believe justice was only for folks with money and power. Papa used to say, "Land doesn't lie, Sarah May. Measurements don't lie. Men lie. Weather lies. Even your eyes lie sometimes. But a proper cornerstone set true and deep that tells the truth long after the men who said it are dust." He was right. Those 4 stones we dug up that April, they'd been waiting 18 months to speak. And when they did, 200 men heard. Spring comes, even after the coldest winter. Snow melts, ground thaws. Seeds that looked dead all winter break through soil and reach for light. That's what justice is. A seed planted deep, waiting for the right season to grow. Vernon died in prison, 1903. Governor Wallace spent his last years in disgrace, died bitter and alone. But Papa's ranch, our ranch, mine and Cord's, and now my grandchildren's, we built it into something that matters. Hired workers at fair wages. Gave families homesteads, testified in 7 other fraud cases across Montana, changed some laws, made some things better. The compass reminds me every morning, truth has its own direction. Your job isn't to create it, just to follow where it points, even when the wind's howling and everyone says you're lost. Outside my window now, it's spring again, the 56th spring since that winter of frozen scraps and frozen compasses, meadowlarks singing in the pasture where Papa taught me to sight a line. The earth warm and honest under my boots, the compass on my desk still pointing true north. Some things, once you set them right, stay right. That's enough.